All right, everyone, let's get started. So welcome to this second episode of the FME Server webinar series. Today we're going to talk about schedules. My name is Marc-Olivier Bourdeau. I'm the marketing coordinator at Consortech. Consortech, we're experts in geospatial data integration. And by the way, I see a lot of you guys are from Alberta. So I want to say we're going to be at Geo Alberta next week. We're going to give a presentation over there about how to develop automated and streamlined data processes. So yeah, last week, no, not last week, sorry, last month, the first episode was about automations. Today, it's about schedules. And to present that, I'm with Alison Hughes, who's a GIS data integration consultant at Consortech.
Hello.
Hello, Alison. And with Herman Gonzalez, who is a GIS data integration specialist at Consortech.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so the agenda for today, quick intro, classic scheduling plus demo, scheduling with automations plus demo, the classic schedules versus the automation schedules, cron expressions, client example, we'll go a city view update, and the integrating scheduling with other automations. So I'm going to be acting as a moderator today. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and we'll try and fix that. And yeah, so Alison. Oops, someone says there's no audio. Anyone else doesn't hear us well? I would say try and reload the page. That sometimes is a problem. True. Well, I should write that because you obviously.
All right, we're gonna move on. And Marco is going to take care of the audio situation on his side. So hi, everybody. It's Alison and Herman with me, like Marco said. And yeah, so we're just going to get started here. So for the first, like Marco was saying, for the first webinar that we did last month, it was on automation, which is a new function in FME Server 2019. And it was the intro. So now we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive. But first, I want to just position FME Server and schedules into the broader FME integration platform. So we have FME Desktop. That's the application that usually people start off with. And it's to build and run workflows. We have FME Server. So FME Server is used basically to publish those workspaces up onto a server, create automations, notifications, etc., and basically make your workflows accessible to a larger population if desired. And we have FME Cloud, which is essentially FME Server, but on the cloud. So while FME Server is on premises, FME Cloud is obviously on the cloud. So today we're focusing on FME Server, and we're looking at schedules, the classic schedules, and schedules as they are found within automations. So just a little refresher on automations. So there's for automations, the way it works is we have always a trigger. The trigger could be a schedule, like we're going to look at, or it could be something else like FME Server receives an email or a directory watcher or something like that. The workflow is assembled, so there's different actions that can be done, workspaces that can be ran, etc. And we build it up, have our data destination, etc. And ultimately, in the end, it eliminates the manual steps that you have to do on your day-to-day, your repetitive tasks, the day-to-day. So with that said, we're just going to move on to schedules in FME Server. So I'm going to bring us out of PowerPoint for now, and we're going to take a look at FME Server in general. So this is the main page of FME Server. And we're going to take a look at schedules. So I don't know if any of you have used schedules before, but They have their own little menu item in FME Server, and we can set them up here. So I have on my server already a bunch of schedules set up, but I'm just going to walk through with you the settings. So when you're creating a new schedule, you're going to give it a name, select a category, could have a description. There's the option to enable it or disable it. And then you come to schedule type. So schedule type, we have different options. We have repeat on interval, we have cron expression, and we have occur only once. So I'm going to pop back to the schedules PowerPoint, and we're just going to talk about these options for a second. So the schedule types that we have, the first one, repeat on interval. So this is for basic regular intervals that occur every X seconds, minutes, hours, days, or weeks. So we can't have, with repeat on interval, we can't have irregular schedules, like only on like Mondays and Tuesdays or something like that. And we can't have irregular patterns. So it's a very regular interval that you can set, and you can only set one. So that's the first option. It's easy to set up. The next one is the cron expression. So that is a lot more flexible and precise scheduling, which could be based on specific hours, days, months, etc., and different combinations thereof. So we're going to get into that a little bit later, into more detail. And the last one is occur only once. So this one is launch the job only once at a designated time. So if you're working on something and you only want it to run after you leave the office at like 6 p.m. or something like that, you can set it to run one time, and then it's only going to run that one time, and then it's going to not be active anymore.
Listen, I have a question. What would be the limit between the first two options? What would make you choose repeat on interval or a cron expression?
Yeah, so an example of like what would make us choose between repeat on interval and cron expression. For example, like if I had a workflow that I needed to run, like, or a document or something that's only updated every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I want to have a workspace that runs to publish those changes to the database only on those days, because I don't want to run it all the other days if there's no changes, right? So I might want to use a cron expression so that it's always going to run on only Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which is something that I can't do with the repeat on interval. So usually, you figure out what you want to do. If it works with repeat on interval, where it's a very regular thing, then go for that. But if it doesn't work and it's a bit more precise or irregular, then take a look at the cron expression.
All right, thanks.
All right, so let's go back to the schedules. And keep in mind, we're still in the classic schedules here. This has been with FME Server for a long time. Once you set up the timing and everything, you can choose the workspace. So it's only one workspace per schedule. You take a look at your repository and choose the workspace that you want to run. So choose that. And then you have some more options. You have notifications. So the notification section here will post to a topic, which uses the classic notifications setup in FME Server. It doesn't use automations, although we can connect to it with automations as well. And the other options are advanced. We can choose for this particular schedule a job queue, queued job expiry time, running job expiry time, and run until canceled. And we'll take a look in a bit more detail about what those are. So what are we doing when we're setting the job queue in a schedule? Well, job queues are a mechanism for sending specific jobs to specific FME engines. So if you have like 2 or 3 FME server engines, which are basically the machines that run the workflows, the workspaces, you may want to, especially if you have a regularly occurring job, you may want to set one engine aside so that that job can run uninterrupted. And in that case, you'd want to specify a specific job queue for your job. The next one is queue job expiry time. So if your job is time sensitive, basically this one here is saying, let's control the amount of time or limit the amount of time that a job can sit in the queue. So when it's waiting to be ran. So it will not run if the expiry time is exceeded. So it'll stay in the queue until it is time to execute. You'll still see it there, but once it's time to execute, it's just not going to get ran.
I would like to give a small example. Let's suppose we have a tracking, a model that will be some vehicle tracking, and that it runs every 5 seconds. So let's suppose there's another job that interrupt occupy the engine for a minute. So after that minute, we will have 12 times the job in the job queue, and we won't need to run 12 times the model. We just need to run once after to have the more updated position of the vehicle, so we can just cancel the other 11 jobs in the queue.
Yeah, so then we'll have we don't need all those other jobs because they're sort of in the past, and we can just take the most up-to-date information and post that, basically. That's a good example. The next one is running job expiry time. Sometimes we have jobs that we know they're only supposed to run in a specific amount of time. And if it takes a lot longer than that, or it might be a problem, could pose a problem to your server. It could be that the data is not working properly or the workflow is not working properly. So you can set a running job expiry time. So the job will run for a maximum of however long you set, and then once that time is elapsed, it's just going to cancel the job. So that can be useful. And actually, oops, that was one that was requested for a while before it came on. So that's nice that we have that. After that, we have run until canceled. So in this case, a job is going to run forever, basically, until it is manually canceled by a user. So usually, this is for jobs that are sending and receiving live streams of data.
I have a question. Does this require an exclusive engine to run in the model forever?
Yeah. So when you have a job that's sending or receiving live streams of data, like for example, a Twitter feed or something like that, which you can use, there's a transformer for that. And you just want that running constantly. What that means is that you can't run any other jobs if you only have one engine. So it does occupy an engine the whole time, unless, of course, you cancel it, and then other jobs can run on that same engine.
All right, thank you.
Cool. All right. So moving on, I'm just going to go back. We're going to actually set up a little schedule in the classic version. Okay. So we're going to start. And actually, we're gonna go look at the workspace. So, so the workspace we're gonna take a look at is actually in the samples. So if any of you have FME Server, you should have this workspace on your server. It's the earthquakes extrusion example we're gonna use, and we're gonna run it just right now independently outside of the schedule, just to see what the data looks like, so we can show everyone. And we're going to run it with data download, so we can download that. What this workspace is doing actually is it's taking data from not a live feed, but it's taking it from a URL that's updated frequently. And it's getting the earthquake information of all the earthquakes according to magnitude and whatnot throughout the whole world. So it's reading that in, it's converting it to linear scale. It's extruding the data based on the magnitude and sorting it in order, adding a color, and then writing it to Google KML. So that's a pretty democratic data type. So anybody that has Google Earth can open it. So we're going to take a look at that. So the workspace is here, the earthquakes extrusion. We're going to run it. It doesn't take very long. It's the most up-to-date data. So we're going to take a look at the output. Quakes. Take a second to open Google Earth. And we can already see all those red poles. Those are our current earthquakes. And you can see also that they're ordered by magnitude in this list here. So I want to go look at the biggest magnitude earthquake, 6.6. In Tonga, or near Tonga. So we have that in Google Earth. So this data is all up to date. Let's see, Canada. Oh, we've got a little earthquake over here in Quebec. So, oh yeah, maybe one up in BC as well. Anyways, so that's our data that we're working with, and this is the kind of data that we are going to want to put on a schedule, because if we want to keep that data up to date in our system, we're going to need to run it pretty often to go grab that up-to-date data and push it to wherever we want it to go, for example. So let's go back to schedules. We're going to set that up. We'll create a new schedule. We can call it earthquakes. And let's give it a category. And we'll move on. We'll do the repeat on interval, keep it simple. And we'll say we'll have it run every 1 minute so that the data is always up to date. If a new earthquake happens, we are going to have that in our data set. So we can have it start immediately. We could put an expiry date if we wanted to. Let's say expire in 1 hour, so it doesn't run forever and ever. And yeah, so that's the first part here where we're setting up the schedule. And the workspace we want to actually run is the earthquakes extrusion. There's our URL. And if we want to, probably because this data is going to be running once a minute, we don't want other jobs to interfere with it. So we're going to set up a job queue so that it can run uninterrupted. So I'm going to just click OK for now. I can see that I have my earthquakes schedule here set up, ready to go. And I'm just going to go to engines and licensing. You need to be an admin to do this. So if you want to set up job queues and you don't have admin rights, you have to look into that. And we're going to configure it. So we have, on this FME server, we have 3 engines, 1, 2, 3. So there's 3 different engines that can run. One of them is already allocated for heavy geoprocessing. And I'm just going to create an additional queue, which is going to be specifically for earthquakes. Scroll down. Okay, it says no engines. Oops. And I'm just going to go up here and add that queue to my engine 3 and remove default. So what that means is that only jobs that are tagged with the queue earthquakes are going to be allowed to run on this. So it should run uninterrupted. So I'm going to go back to my schedule and under earthquakes, advanced, and set that job queue to earthquakes. Click OK. So now my earthquake schedule should be running once a minute. It's going to end in about an hour. So if I take a look at my jobs, oh, I can see it's already run. Well, that's the first one that I ran. The next one here that ran at 3:21 is earthquakes. You can see it's ran on the schedule here. So the source type is schedules. Oops, I got it completed. So the next one should run in about a minute. All right, so that's the classic schedule. It's pretty basic, pretty straightforward. We're going to move on and we're going to look at automations. So we now in 2019 have the automations function. So that's a visual way basically to plan out our automations. So I'm going to create a new one, a new automation. And before we do anything, we're just going to give it a name. We're going to save it. We're going to call it earthquakes. And we're going to tag it AML because that's our output data. And we're also going to tag it as schedule. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. We're going to say OK. All right, so the first thing that we need to set up in this automation, if we're going to do exactly the same thing as we did in the schedules, is set up the trigger. I'm just going to double click on that. The trigger event I'm going to choose is schedule initiated. And here's where we set up kind of the first part of the schedule, like in classic schedules. So for repeat on interval, we're going to select repeat every 1 minute. And the end date, we're just going to set in an hour. And we're going to click apply. Now this is converted to a schedule. But in order to get the second half, we have to set up the next action. So one of the things you'll notice with schedules, the old schedules, is that you can only run one workspace for one schedule. But here we could have multiple paths and run multiple workspaces on one schedule. But we're just going to select our workspace, earthquakes extrusion, and there's our URL, and it's the same parameters that we have in the second half of our schedules here. So the job queue is earthquakes, and we're just going to say apply. So right now, this automation setup is exactly the same as what we've done in our classic schedules. So we're going to save it, and we're going to say start automation. And if we take a look at our jobs that ran, we should quickly see, yeah, so we have our old schedule source type, and the new automation that we did, earthquakes, and the source type is automations, is also running. So yeah, so basically it's doing the exact same thing. So some of you might be wondering, well, why do we have the possibility of both? What's the difference? Why would we want to choose one over the other? So we're going to go back to the PowerPoint and take a look at that. So as you can see, they are pretty much the same thing. There's a few differences. So for classic schedules, one of the things is that you can easily see the list of all of your schedules plus some of the details. So just to show you, if we go back to our schedules here, we have all of these. We know they're all schedules. We can see like the start time, the end time, the recurrence, the workspace, etc. So it's pretty straightforward. We have that list. It's easy to manage. If we go to automations, we have all of our automations, but we don't know if these are schedules or not. They could be directory watchers. They could be triggered by an email. They could be anything. So we don't really know that. So.
But is there any way to just like isolate somehow the automations related to schedules?
Yeah, so there doesn't seem to be, there's no way in FME to be able to do that out of the box. However, we do have the function of tags. So that's why we set up the tag schedule on this one so that we can easily isolate it. So as long as you're rigorous and you always put schedule in your schedules, you can find them by searching just the tags that contain schedule. Now, that said, if you want to actually see it and see the details of the schedule, you have to take a look within your automation, but at least you can isolate them using the tag function. So going back to this, so you can easily access the list. And also with classic schedules, if you want to add on and have other automations associated with the schedule, it's a little bit more complicated to do. You need to use the classic notifications to automate. Otherwise, with automations, you have that visual interface, and you can easily connect to other processes and automations all in the same interface. So that's kind of a benefit of the automations. But yeah, they're very, very similar. We don't really know where that's going to go in the future, if schedules are going to be completely integrated into automations or not, but I'm curious to find out. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at actually is go a little bit deeper into the cron expressions. So cron expressions are, like I said earlier, allowing us to do more flexible scheduling, more precise scheduling. It enables you to schedule jobs to run periodically at certain times of day. And Safe Software, who are the makers of FME, actually put out a pretty good article that describes some of the expressions that you can do. So some of these expressions, you can use the repeat on interval. However, some of them are a bit more complex, so they're going to allow you to do all kinds of things. Like, for example, the first one here, fire at 12 noon every day, is something you can do with the repeat on interval. But if you want to fire at 2:10 p.m. and at 2:44 p.m. every Wednesday in the month of March, which is quite precise, you have to use a cron expression. So this gives you that example here. Now this looks a little bit cryptic. So there are some other resources that can help us understand how to create them and how to interpret the cron expressions. So we have cron expression resources here. Second one, the first one's just that article, that same article. The second one is a link that takes us to the freeformatter.com, and we can set up, like we can easily create a cron expression. So if I wanted to set up a schedule that runs, for example, only on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I want it to run at 6 a.m., at 2 p.m., and again at 5 p.m., I can just set that up here, and it's going to create the expression for me. So all I have to do is copy and paste that into FME Server. So that's pretty neat. There's a lot of things you can do with this, depending on what you want to do. I definitely recommend this tool. Now we're just going to look at an example, a client example that actually uses cron. It's not super complex, so I'm going to go into schedules. So this is set up using the classic schedules, but it could be with automations as well. But it's the city of East Gwillimbury, or the town of East Gwillimbury in Ontario. And they have a lot of growth and a lot of new lots and everything being put in. So they need to update City View, which manages that on a pretty regular basis. And they have a dashboard that shows, all of the new developments and whatnot. So they have workers providing data and information, but it's only Monday to Friday. So they don't need that information on the weekend being updated because it's not being updated. So this is only going to run at 6 a.m. from Monday to Friday. And one of the cool things that we can do with that cron, that website that I was showing, is we can actually take a cron expression if we don't know what it's actually doing. We can paste it, and we can click describe expression, and it's going to actually describe the cron expression in real words. So at 6 a.m. every day between Monday and Friday every month. So that's a pretty nice little tool. And we can click here for the next execution dates. So that tells me the next dates that this is going to be run as of today, of the current time. So that's pretty neat as well. So if you have some complex scheduling needs, definitely recommend this website. All right, so let's take a look. We're just going to go back to our automations we have our earthquakes automation, and that's currently running. But right now, it's exactly the same as schedules. If you want to take full advantage of the automations and set it up so it's a little bit more robust, we can do that easily with the automation. So I'm going to stop the automation so we can work on it. And let's say, like, for example, we want our data, our earthquakes data, to be uploaded automatically to a Dropbox. Okay, so like, I don't know if any of you are using Dropbox for storing files, but you can, with FME, publish directly to Dropbox. So we only want to do that if this passes, though, because if the earthquakes workspace fails, then we obviously don't want to upload that. But if it passes, we're going to click on the next action. And we're going to select our action, which will be to upload to Dropbox. So we've got a new little action there, destination. And you'll notice that in the parameters of the Dropbox, the first thing we need is an access token. So that's like a special thing we need to do and get from Dropbox, but it's not that complicated. So if you have a Dropbox account, you can go to dropbox.com/developers.app/apps as you're logged in. And you need to create an app. So we're just going to click on this button here. And we're going to choose an API. So we're going to take the first one. Choose the type of access. We're going to want full Dropbox access or not. And we're going to name the app. So let's call it Earthquake. Why not? And we'll create it. I'll call it that. So let's call it Earthquake FME app. Here we go. So one thing that this gives us is the ability to get an access token. So if you're wanting to know, like how do you do this, in the help, save software help, upload to Dropbox, it really goes through the steps. So you can, if you want some help with that also, we can always help you out with that. Don't hesitate to contact us or write to Marco. But yeah, so we need to generate an access token. So back here in Dropbox, we're gonna click generate. This long string of characters, we're just gonna do a little copy paste and put that into our location here, into our Dropbox details. So that allows us to connect specifically to my Dropbox. Then we need to set the source path. So this is the path for the data that we're going to be copying into Dropbox. And I know that my workspace publishes the data to system temp engine results quakes. So every time it runs, this gets updated. I'm going to select that. I'm going to click OK. And my destination path down here is the folder that I want the data to go into in Dropbox. So I can actually create a new folder within Dropbox here. And it's important to validate if you don't want some errors. And it says that it's valid, so that's good. It means my account is accessible. And I'm going to click apply. So just going to save. And I'm going to start the automation. And we'll see if that works. Hopefully it works. So, looks like I already have, happened real fast. I already have earthquakes data in my Dropbox folder. And quakes.kml, I got written to it just now. So that worked out well. The next thing we might want to do to make this a more robust process is put in some error trapping. I'm going to stop the automation. And we saw this in the last webinar. We went into a little bit more detail about the emails, so I'm going to go through this a little bit quick. But if it fails, we probably want to receive an email or some kind of notification. So I'm going to click next action, send an email. load the Gmail template because that's what I'm using for this demo, but you know, you can use your SMTP server at work or whatever. And my email, my password, email 2, same thing, email from, I can put anything. I'm going to put FME server at fmeserver.com. Subject will be earthquake workspace 0. And if I wanted to, I could put some fancy text or an HTML or an attachment or whatever, but for today, I just want to be notified. So I'm going to just say apply. And we probably also want to be notified if the Dropbox update fails. I'm going to do a copy paste of that so I don't have to redo all the settings. Connect it up to the action failed. Just change, all I'm going to do is change the topic or the subject. I'm going to say earthquake, upload to Dropbox failed. And I'm going to validate. Good, and then apply. So it's a little bit more robust now in case anything goes wrong. At least I'm going to get notified. So in order to test this, I'm not going to make this fail on purpose. What I'm just going to do a little trick and make those emails get sent if it passes. So I'm going to save that, start the automation, and pretty soon, well, I got a little notification from Dropbox saying I connected a new app, which is great. Oh, and I got my 2 emails, earthquake workspace fail and earthquake upload to Dropbox fail. So that's great. I can see that that works. If this was a real project, I would definitely want to test that and force a failure, but for a webinar, this works. I'm just going to put those back. And save it. I got my earthquakes automation. All right, so I think that's it. We're getting close to the end there. I'm going to pass you back to Marco. Marco, do we have any questions? Did anybody ask any questions?
No, not yet. Guys, it's now time to ask questions. If you have any questions, feel free to send them. As of right now, yeah, so our next episode will be on December 4th. December 4th. On real time, and then we're gonna take a little Christmas vacation, and we'll be back on January 15th for applications integration. Next will be February 12th, the directory watcher, March 11th, more on apps, and April 8th, the REST API. So thank you very much, Alison. Thank you, Herman. We're going to stick around maybe 1 more minute. If you have any questions, you can ask them right now in the chat or send them to me by email at marketing@consortech.com. Yeah, well, thank you, Alison. Thank you, Herman.
Yeah, so we'll just be here waiting for a second.
Any song you want to sing or something? Now it's time.
Let's not torture people.
Yeah. All right. Well, no questions. I guess that was clear.
All right.
All right, then. So send your questions by email if there's something. So have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Oh.
Bye.
Oh, thank you. All right, bye.
Bye.